So as folks continue to gather up, welcome everybody. We'll give it just another minute or so to make sure everybody got logged in that's trying to. And we'll get started. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the Homeless Prevention and Response System monthly meeting. As we get started here, I wonder if anyone would like to read the land acknowledgement for us. A land acknowledgement is a formal statement recognizing the indigenous people of a place. It is a public gesture and appreciation for the past and present indigenous stewardship of the lands we now occupy. The Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness and the HPRS Advisory Council would like to acknowledge that we gather today on the traditional lands of the Dena'ina Athabascans. For thousands of years, the Dena'ina have been and continue to be the stewards of this land. It is with gratefulness and respect that we recognize the contributions, innovations, and contemporary perspectives of the Upper Cook Inlet Dena'ina. Thanks to them. Just by way of a mission moment, just myself personally, I just want to express my gratitude to the continuing efforts of Beans Cafe. We just heard a report that they're doing 2 meals a day for all folks there on the east side of downtown at the Henry House, and they continue with their outreach ministry of missions into the camps themselves, be it at every coalition pop-up that I've been to, and just want to thank them for their continuing dedication to this population, which is a big deal to me, and thankful for them. So leading up to that, there's been a lot of work by a Midtown Assembly person, Assembly member Rivera, and he has an update for us. Are you ready, Felix?
I am ready, yes.
Thank you.
Wonderful. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen and then get myself situated. Okay. There. And then, all right. And then let me move this. Okay, wonderful. All right, thanks everyone. Hi, for those who don't know me, my name is Felix Rivera. I serve on the Anchorage Assembly representing Midtown, and I am the chair of the Assembly's Housing and Homelessness Committee. So I was asked today just to do an update on all of the various work that the Housing and Homelessness Committee and the municipality writ large is doing with regard to homelessness. And so I am here to do that. So these are the topics that I'm going to be covering today, a wide range of topics, several of them you've probably heard of in the news, other topics probably less so. So I'm going to first start with a few things that you have probably heard a lot about, which is first is the Sanctioned Camp Community Task Force. So this task force is, okay, there you go. So this task force was created out of the demobilization efforts of our previous year's emergency cold weather shelter plan. And the task force came out with some immediate needs recommendations in early May. And those recommendations included a variety of things like 5 sites for sanctioned camps and exploring other non-municipal ideas for sanctioned camps. That the Assembly, as folks probably know, went with one of those 5 recommendations, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about some of the work on that here soon. Beyond that immediate needs recommendation that came out from the task force in May, they're currently going through their process to get their final report done to the Assembly that will include a variety of recommendations that you see on the screen here, tackling a lot of different areas of allowed camping or sanctioned camping. So tackling the safety and security issue, services issue, the planning and design, operations, and metrics. What does it look like for any of these sanctioned or allowed camps to be successful in the municipality of Anchorage? So a lot of that work is happening, and the task force is meeting weekly, and their report should be done and delivered to the Assembly on July 6th, and sometime in July, the Assembly will begin its review of those recommendations. The Complex Behavioral Health Needs Community Task Force has also been, they started meeting up again this month. So they also released a report in May with their immediate needs recommendations. And their recommendations really came in 3 different areas: system coordination, shelter, and healthcare care coordination and housing. So really the way that I think about their recommendations, it's internal within the behavioral health system. How can we better coordinate? They came up with some recommendations on shelter, and then they came up with recommendations of between the behavioral health system and the HPRS system, the 2 systems, how they can better coordinate. So I think they came up with some really good stuff, and they, like I said earlier, they actually started meeting again today to focus on their next phase of work, which is really on implementation and addressing barriers. And so they are planning and leading up to a behavioral health leadership summit that should be happening sometime in August, where we really want to get the CEOs, the policymakers, the funding decision makers at the table, who can actually take action on some of the recommendations and addressing some of the barriers that the task force has outlined, so we can make some positive steps in our behavioral health system in the municipality. Then, of course, you all have heard about the pilot allowed camp. So as I said earlier, the Sanctioned Camp Community Task Force came out with their initial recommendations in May that had 5 campsites. The Assembly supported 1 campsite, and specifically for 30 to 60 individuals at an allowed camp, the Old National Archives site. We're currently going through the planning process. The resolution that the Assembly passed in June had a goal of getting it done by mid-July. I think we honestly could get something up and running by July timeframe. So looking forward to continuing in that work. Right now, the purchasing department's going through their process to see which possible, if this is going to be municipally funded, which possible temporary shelter structure will be chosen. Initially, a lot of the initial recommendation and a lot of the news talked about pallet shelters as the determined vendor. The Assembly decided not to go with that process and instead look at all possible vendors, and we'll see what that work, what the result of that work looks like. Then there is work currently ongoing with the Clean Slate strategy, which is basically the work to figure out and come to a community decision on permanent year-round low barrier shelter. And the work is really being done in different phases, some of which maybe are going to be working in parallel. So right now we're in the criteria phase where we're really focusing on site selection criteria. And the Assembly actually recently released that specific criteria. It was on our Assembly agenda at our last meeting earlier this week. And then we're gonna have a public hearing and a vote on that criteria at our next Assembly meeting on July 11th. So encourage folks to take a look at that and let us know what you think. But that criteria is basically the first step in the process of how do we even choose where this shelter should go? What are the criteria that we want? And so that's what that resolution achieves. Then the next two are really probably going to be parallel paths where we're looking at locations that match the criteria the municipality will eventually adopt on July 11th. And then the operations. And we're actually, I think, in a decent place with both of these, because when it comes to locations, various other task forces and working groups have actually looked up and done a lot of research on locations, which is wonderful. So we have a starting point for locations. And the same thing goes with operations. Prior task forces and working groups, and even currently the Anchorage Health Department, with regard specifically to the proposed Tudor and Elmore Navigation Center, which in my opinion is wrapped into this work of the Clean Slate strategy. They also have been doing a lot of great operations work. So I think we have some really good places to start when it comes to location and operations. We're not starting from scratch, and looking forward to going into that work even further. The end goal, of course, here is between November 1st and the end of the year to see if we can get some type of permanent year-round low barrier shelter up and running. All of the prior slides and a lot of the future slides that I'm going to be walking you all through really depend on the success of this particular aspect, and that is funding. So we need to be able to fund all aspects of the work, and they're going to need some type of funding, more than likely. So we are looking at both capital and operational costs. And we're looking both internal funding sources and external funding sources. And so there is a funding group who is having all of these meetings and who is trying to really try to paint the picture, particularly really primarily focused on this fiscal year, this calendar year, I should say. And then, of course, sort of moving into the future, what funding sources can we annualize to help make these things successful and systematic rather than sort of one-off programs. So a lot of that work has happened, and we're hoping that by mid-July we'll be able to present the results of this, because as you all have also probably seen in the media, there's always the talk of how are we going to pay for this? How are we going to pay for this? And we do not have a endless pit of money somewhere that we can rely on to pay for this. And by this, primarily, I am talking about the allowed camp. If we're going to actually get it up and running by July, we need to have a sense of how we're going to afford that. The permanent year-round low barrier shelter, if we're going to get that up and running by the end of the year, we need to have a sense of how we're going to afford that. And then, of course, I'm going to get into this soon, the emergency cold weather shelter plan for the 2023-2024 winter. We need to be able to at least know how we're going to afford this part, the 2023 part of it, and then we can build the 2024 part of it into our budget if that is the desire of the Assembly. So this work is critical. We do have a variety of housing coming online, and this is actually months and months of work leading up to housing coming online June, July, and August. So almost about a year ago now, the Assembly funded a variety of different hotel conversions, whether that's the Barrett Inn, Lake House Inn, and then even the guest house. And then we also earlier this year funded the Golden Lion to convert that into housing. So right now, all of that work is going to try to get these stood up and try to get folks in them and housed. Right now, we're working through the barriers to utilizing those units that we do have coming online, and the Anchorage Affordable Housing and Land Trust is doing an excellent job working with the coalition and others to try to get rid of those barriers so that folks can come into those units and be successful in those housing units. And then the municipality is, we're working to successfully turn on the former Golden Lion as housing. And, right now, I think the primary issue and probably the reason why the Golden Lion might be delayed a little bit, turning it on as housing, is the way that the administration is looking at it as a almost like an assisted living home situation for the former Golden Lion. And I'm sure that there are ways that we can achieve that same goal of helping folks who maybe are medically fragile or elders, but maybe still trying to get the Golden Lion turned on rather than really do it as only as an assisted living facility. So looking forward to seeing what we can do to get that done. As I alluded to earlier, we do have to focus on the 2023-2024 emergency cold weather shelter. So the Assembly recently did, the Housing and Homelessness Committee really started delving into it earlier this month. We conducted some preliminary planning, and our current planning numbers, which will be refined in July, really looking at 450 individuals that we want to plan for. And that's actually probably not too much off the mark. So last year, we planned for 300 individuals in our emergency cold weather shelter, and it actually ended up we undercut ourselves last year in our planning efforts. We probably should have been planning for more than 300 individuals. So one of the things that we're going to do is see what we can do to refine our planning number to see if 400 is right, or maybe we need to plan for more or fewer than 450. And then we're going to also be looking at our budgets per each lever. So we know that based off of the excellent work of the Emergency Cold Weather Shelter Task Force last year, we know what the levers basically are. We're talking about non-congregate shelter, whether that's in hotels or other spaces that are built for non-congregate living. We're looking at existing capacity and see what we can do to expand existing capacity in our shelter network. Then we're also looking at standing up temporary shelter. In my opinion, and I know this has been in the media a lot, there's some assembly members who say that's going to be the Sullivan Arena. I disagree. If we're going to stand up temporary shelter, it's going to be somewhere beyond the Sullivan Arena, because I do not want us to use that facility again. And then, of course, we need to identify funding sources to pay for that. So all of that is going to be wrapped into the July Housing and Homelessness Committee meeting as we continue to plan. My goal is that by August, we have a plan that we can all, as a committee, sign on to and then move forward with implementation of the plan before winter arrives. Then I have a few, I think a couple more just one-off issues that I think are just important for folks to know. So first is the former Forest Park Mobile Home Park. So this is a mobile home park in Chugakiko River, and there was, I think, some media done on this, so you might have heard about it, where they are currently possibly facing eviction. The municipality has basically said, we're going to evict you. The Assembly said, give us 90 days to try to figure out some solutions. And so we're getting close, and that was in May. So we're getting close to, or yeah, I think it was in April or May, one of those two. It all blurs. So we're getting close to the end of those 90 days, or we will be soon. So there is actually a report that's going to be due end of this week for us to be talking about long-term solutions and what those, at least initially, what those solutions might look like. And particularly Assemblymember Kevin Cross has taken a lot of lead on this, and he's looking at the J-Bear modular units, which are available and are actually fairly cheap, to see if that might be the long-term solution. Folks wouldn't be able to stay on site at the Forest Park Mobile Home Park, which is a big issue, I know, for a lot of folks. So we're doing our best to try to see what we can do here, and the primary focus for this is preventing additional homelessness in our community. So if the last one was preventing additional homelessness in our community, this one is doing what we can to mitigate negative impacts and to improve material conditions for people currently experiencing homelessness. And that's specifically at the encampment at 3rd and Ingra, there are a lot of issues, and the Assembly gets regular reports on issues that are happening at 3rd and Ingra. And so there's planning underway to see what we can do to demobilize this particular encampment. There's thanks to the Coalition for organizing pop-up outreach at 3rd and Ingra, also looking at what we can do to leverage existing funding sources like our ERA2 or Emergency Rental Assistance funds. And then what community organizing, very similar to what happened at Centennial. There was a lot of community organizing that happened around there, what we can do to actualize and catalyze that kind of community organizing at 3rd and Ingra. And then last issue is the housing action. So there is currently, the Assembly had a housing retreat in May, and currently we're assessing that data, and there were some surveys, online surveys that were also done pre-post the housing retreat. And the Assembly's, one of our top focuses is on housing and what we can do to catalyze more housing being built in our community. So this housing retreat was one step really of a pathway to figure out what we can do to identify issues that are getting in our way. And so some of the key focus areas as outlined on this slide are things like reducing barriers, what housing incentives can we create or bolster, what zoning and land use issues that we need to focus on, and then what funding do we really need to explore if we really want to get more housing up and running. So these different housing action groups are being formed, and they're going to be doing a lot of work leading up to an Anchorage Housing Action Summit, which is going to be happening in August. So a lot of great work that's going to be happening on housing this year. And it doesn't mean that there's going to be a lot of housing built this year, but it does mean that we're at least going to be focusing on what levers we can pull to get more housing up in the coming years. And that's something that I look forward to engaging in, because we need to continue the progress that we have been making. In the last year, we've stood up 300 units of housing. If we can continue that trend and keep standing up hundreds of units of housing every year, that will chip away at the gap that we know exists, which is 2,400 units of gap that we know exists in our community. So we need to be chipping away at that each and every year. And I think this is going to be a great way for us to explore how we do that. So to close, we are in a crisis. Don't deny that at all. And we do need help. We do have very limited internal funding sources to deal with this. So we do need help from the state of Alaska and especially from HUD. And there's work ongoing to see what we can do and advocacy with the state and with HUD to see how we can get some funding and assistance and collaboration from them. But here's the bigger picture that I think really connects a lot of this work. And I'm sorry if I'm going over. So first is our overarching strategy is a housing first approach that's focused on implementing the Anchored Home Plan. And it's really focused on addressing our emergency needs, like the need for more shelter beds and the surge in unsheltered individuals, while really taking a holistic approach to our work to ensure long-term housing stability and success. That's so critical. We need to make sure that folks, when we get them into housing, that they stay in housing. And so that stability is critical. So all of the lanes of work that I talked about are really collectively helping us to achieve the vision of functional zero. And I want to thank you all for your time. I'll stop sharing now.
Well, thank you, Felix. That was a lot of very encouraging and great news. And I just want to comment on the progress we've made in the last couple of years of not having this constant state of emergency poverty type mindset that we're constantly behind the 8 ball and have to make an emergency decision in a moment. So slowing that down, getting the process defined, getting the folks involved and engaged, and the multiple task force. That's what I really appreciate, is the multiple conversations that are all going on, different segments of the communities that do seem to be coalescing around really understanding what the need is. So thank you very much. So the HPRS committee updates. Did you want to do a compliance committee update, Sid?
Well, the compliance committee has been on vacation, awaiting the arrival of our new outstanding ACEH liaisons, the persons of Jessica Parks and Taria Ware. We're looking forward to working with them as we launch a monitoring program to make sure that HUD funds are being used in conformance with HUD requirements. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And then Julia Terry, the coordinated entry chair, was not able to attend today, but the big update from CE is that we hope to have a working committee meeting on the 7th of July where we may set a timeline for adding. They want to add a vulnerability component to the algorithm that helps to assess need. And she invites folks that like to review the variety of tools that are being considered to reach out to her directly. Again, that's Julia Terry. And the data committee that I co-chair, or I'm a vice chair to. We've just been assisting where we can, and we continue to evaluate and are looking to get more active in some of the data, but we really do have some quality stuff happening, and it's reflected in the reports that are going to HUD and the data coming back from them. And then ACAH, you ready for that, Jessica? Or
yeah,
thank you.
All right, I'm going to give a two-part update today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that ACH is doing and some updates from the organization, and then talk about some government updates, which thanks to Felix, he covered the majority of the local updates. But starting with ACH, the expanded outreach services that were funded by the municipality this last month are underway. We are in the process of adding a third pop-up to a regular schedule of pop-ups, which have been on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We are being really flexible and nimble on the scheduling of those pop-ups, though, because as I'm sure everyone has heard, we have been targeting encampments that are larger to be able to have a person-focused outreach that meets people where they are. And as some of these larger camps have been abated and people have moved to new places, we need to be able to be flexible and bring those pop-ups where people are settling down. So while there is always a schedule out on the ACH website, you can also reach out directly to ACH if you are wondering where we might be in pop-ups. And then happy to be starting up the mini project Homeless Connects, which if you were part of the HPRS prior to COVID, you will remember that in conjunction with the point in time count, we used to host a event called Project Homeless Connect that brought service providers together, and we were able to be a one-stop shop for people who were experiencing homelessness or having interactions with the HPRS to be able to access services and supplies all together in one place. So part of this expanded outreach is to host miniature versions of those events around town over the course of the summer and early fall to be able to bring those services directly to people in a compact and effective way. So excited for that, and those schedules will be out on the website as well. Also highlighting that every Wednesday morning, we have been hosting an HPRS all CoC meeting that really is just bringing providers together to talk about shelter, to talk about navigation, and then give those updates in a more real-time way on what is going on and what challenges people are having. So would welcome everyone to join us at those Wednesday morning meetings as well to be able to get those updates. And then last, just wanted to share that the encampment at Davis Park was noticed for abatement this afternoon. So if that is a 10-day abatement notice, which is what I believe it was, that would put the encampment clearing on July 3rd. But because the July 4th is a holiday, I'm not sure if the municipality will have teams out there on Monday or if it will be a little bit later that week. But it was posted, and the intent is to abate the encampments at the Davis Park area as well as the snow dump area across the street. So that whole area. So again, like I said, our outreach will continue to be out there and supporting people who have been residents of that camp and that park this summer, and provide those supports to them, and then we'll watch and see where people go. So after that abatement is complete, the only regular pop-up will be the one at the 3rd and Ingra encampment, and the rest of the pop-ups will be more encampment focused as we see people start to establish some larger encampments. On the hiring side, finishing up the hiring for the housing navigators, which will be part of that expanded outreach here at ACH, and then we'll be advertising and hiring for a finance and grants person here. So if you know of anyone who might be interested in that, please feel free to send them our way to take a look at that job description and apply if they're interested. And then ACH continues to update that capacity map that if you are a provider of shelter, transitional housing, or housing programs, you'll get those emails twice a week. That capacity map is hosted on our website and was recently updated to have some pretty cool charts to be able to track that capacity. But more importantly, as we don't have much capacity right now, if we have any, is the information on how to access wait lists. So if there is a wait list for a shelter or a special way to access that shelter, or if you have questions, all of that information is part of that capacity map as well. The NOFO for the CoC funds is anticipated to be released sometime in the next, I would say, 30 to 60 days. So keep an eye out on our weekly digest for more information about that, and start thinking about projects. If you or your organization has been thinking about a bonus project or writing for a regular project in that CoC, think about the structure of that. A lot of times this turnaround is pretty quick. A shout out to the compliance committee, which will, as always, host and organize and do a great job on rank and review. So if you are not submitting an application for a project, but want to serve on that rank and review committee, reach out to myself or Sid, and we will make sure you get looped up when we get into that portion of the work. And that is it for ACH updates. To give a few quick government updates, Felix talked about the local work. On the state side, I'm sure that everyone has read about the governor's vetoes. I think at this point, it is unlikely that there will be enough votes to convene a special session to be able to vote on overriding any of those vetoes. And while there were no direct vetoes of any funding for housing and homeless services, there were vetoes in early childhood education services, childcare services, and behavioral health services. And as we all know, all of those have direct effects on people experiencing homelessness, people who are at risk of homelessness, and the housing stability of people in Anchorage. So take this opportunity to advocate for your programs, advocate for your clients, and connect with your legislators and be able to share how important funding for your programs and your clients are, so that when we go into this next session, we're all really well prepared to talk about the wonderful things that they're funding instead of fighting to get things put back into budgets. On the federal side, there has been a lot of work that we have been doing in conjunction with the Balance of State CoC. So that is the organization that oversees the funding and the continuum of care for everywhere except for Anchorage, recognizing that the entire state is facing a housing crisis. And a lot of the work that we do together. We have been advocating for updates and changes to the funding formulas when it comes to some of these formula funded HUD programs, to be able to recognize that small states, and even though Alaska is a very large state in volume, we're a small state in population, tend to get the short end of the stick when it comes to some of these funding formulas. So really advocating for some equity when it comes to how that funding is allocated out to individual states and individual localities. And then also wanted to highlight that the most recent federal legislation that passed was the debt ceiling agreement. And one of the pieces that was part of that negotiation and settlement was that let me make sure I word this correctly. The funding for things outside of the entitlement programs and defense funding is flat funded for this upcoming year and limited to a 1% increase for the year after that. So that does include the majority of the HUD funded programs that a lot of our services depend on for their funding. So that's something to keep in mind, that while costs are increasing, it is likely that all of those programs will be flat funded unless there are appropriation changes between different program areas, but overall will be flat funded. Whew. And then last but not least, it sounds like there's going to be lots of summits in August and lots of conversations around housing and homeless services, but I would throw one more in there, that ACH and the Balance of State are working together to host a legislative housing summit where we will have representatives from Senator Sullivan's office, from Senator Murkowski's office, and Representative Peltola's office, as well as the governor's office together to talk about housing, talk about funding strategies, and talk about ways that we can all work together to make investments that are effective and efficient in housing. On that note, if anyone has any questions, I am open to them now. Oh, I see one in the chat. Yes, I will get you an email address, Carrie. That is wonderful. I love that. And actually, it'll be my email address, and then I'll talk to the team about a better way to direct that for right now. But if you come up with questions later, please feel free to email me. I'll put my email in the chat.
Well, thank you, Jess. That was certainly a lot, and appreciate all your hard work and ongoing efforts. Moving on to special presentations, and are you taking this, Mitch?
I'm going to present a visual, and Emily is going to speak to it.
Awesome, thank you both. Go ahead.
Okay, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is just a really quick overview of the HPRS advisory council elections process based on our understanding of what has taken place in the past and what hopefully will make sense to everybody. So we'll just go through this really quickly, give you guys a quick recap, and then follow-up questions. And then you guys can always reach out to us if you have questions beyond that. So what we're looking at is at this stage, per conversation with the executive committee, we have applications closing on June 30th. If somebody got an application and they just didn't realize that it was closing and they put it in on July 1, obviously we can make some considerations, but we have gotten a lot of applications that have come in. But the goal would be to close that by June 30th to allow for us to process everything, make sure everything's in order, save and file those documents, and collate everything to present to the executive committee by their July meeting. Their July meeting is on July 12th. No, I'm wrong. July 8th, I believe. No, 13th. Maybe I'm off. Either way, it will happen. They will get presented to them, and then they will be able to basically vet the candidates. The whole idea of getting it in front of the executive committee is so that they can just make sure that everybody is legitimate. There's no questions. There's no background in somebody that might be, concerning. Not that, everybody knows everybody, but it's just a chance to kind of review outside of us. We're the only ones seeing most of these applications, and this is not in our purview to obviously tell you who to put through. So the executive committee is just going to take a look at everything, make sure everything's clean and ready. Once that's been done, Mitch and I will notify the applicants and make sure that everybody's still interested, that everybody is ready to proceed, or if they aren't, that's where their process will end. If they are, they get built into the election survey that we will work with Sasha to produce. Once that is produced, that will be available during the July monthly meeting. So that's what, I don't know what date that is actually, but whatever date that is, that monthly meeting will have the meeting packet will contain all of the collated bios. So you guys will be able to see all the applicants. It makes it really easy to just review them. We will make sure that everybody's aware of what the process looks like. Then when the meeting takes place, whoever's chairing that day, because right now, obviously, we're in a little bit of a mixed bag, but let's just say it's Allison. She will announce the opening of the voting at the beginning of the work session, and then that will remain open until 4:30 p.m. to allow for the general membership as well to participate, because our understanding is that the general membership it's open to everybody to vote. Now, that being said, please correct us if we are wrong on that, and then we can obviously order everything to only take place during the work session. But we just figured we wanted to give everyone enough time to go in and do their voting. So let's just say that the voting is done at 4:30. Everything will be collated live. Mitch and I will make sure we get all the results. We will announce that privately to the chair, and then the chair will make that formal announcement to everybody who those new counselors are. Following the election outside of your purview, but what we will do is take care of all the requirements for paperwork, signatures, getting them their binder of orientation for the HPRS Council, and it'll also be added to all the invite lists and be added to the website, et cetera. So those are things you don't have to worry about, just putting it on there so you are aware. But that's essentially where we're at. That's the process that we have felt seems to work best based on our understanding, but the purpose of presenting this to you all today is to get that feedback, make sure that we're not missing anything. Again, we haven't been here for as long as some of you other folks have been here, so we want to make sure everybody is on the same page and open to questions, feedback, all of it, and I will end there.
Sounds good, Emily. I appreciate all that education and updates. The next HPRS meeting will be July 27th. And looks like we got some work to do between now and then. Appreciate this. I guess the other question I would have is if we are these 3-year seats? 3-year terms that folks are coming in, or?
That's a good question. Honestly, Roger, I don't know what the term is. If anybody else can answer that on this meeting, I would be very happy to know. Jessica, I don't know if you have any insight on that.
Yeah, they're actually forever. When you apply for an advisory council seat, it is as yourself. So the organization that you work for and the organization that you have worked for in the past is all part of your package that you are bringing to the table, but it is as you as a person. Our seats are not currently seats that would be like by definition ex officio by nature of the organization or by nature of the position. So you will serve on the advisory council for as long as you want to. Some people do feel that when they step away from the position that was working in housing and homelessness and within the HPRS, that their capacity to participate has gone away. And so we do see people that will step down when they leave the work, but you are not required to, and you will stay until you decide to go or the rest of the advisory council decides you should go.
Awesome. And then I saw a question from Susie as how many seats are vacant. I think I'd heard 5 at one time, but maybe that would be a good update. 5, that's what.
Currently 5 open seats. Yep.
Yeah. And you know, we need some energy. We need some folks that are ready to get involved and make a difference. And like so many of us that still carry the passion. So thank you, Emily and Mitch, for the updates. Question and from the chat. I'm thinking we've got everything covered in there. I'm not seeing anything new. Do we have anybody who would like to from the public who would like to do public comment? Go ahead and unmute if anybody would like to make public comment.
I would say on a positive note, Roger, that you guys do have currently 8 applications that are all very solid, and you do have 1 individual with lived experience, which is great. So yeah, we're getting some great interest, and it looks like we might even have a couple more coming in between now and the 30th. So
Awesome.
Positive news.
It is. We need all the help we can get. Oh my gosh. But we're doing good work still. So once again, if there's any members of the public who would like to share their thoughts and or suggestions, or this would be a good time to do it. Well, moving on from there, there's lots of upcoming events with the task force that continue to meet. Couple of summits upcoming that we talked about earlier. We have a number of advocacy opportunities coming up. The 29th from 1 to 2:30, the Sanction Camp Community Task Force. We will be talking about operations and management and metrics at this next meeting. That's happening at the City Hall, the Mayor's Conference Room, 8th floor. On July 5th, the Sanctions Camp Community Task Force meeting. This is going to be the one, I believe, where we finalize our recommendations to the Assembly. That's due out by the 6th, and then we'll go in front of at the next regular Assembly meeting. This says Wednesday the 11th. I think it's Tuesday the 11th, and again that will be at the Assembly Chambers, the Lusek Library. upcoming assembly committee and the housing and homeless meeting, the 19th, room 155 at City Hall. Of course, another assembly meeting on the 25th. And the 27th is our next HPRS Advisory Council monthly meeting. And that will update us for the upcoming advocacy opportunities. Do any counselors or members of the public like to make closing comments at this time? And I see a new old face in the audience. Katie, how are you doing? Good to see you back.
Roger, thank you for being our chair this afternoon.
Yeah, thanks,
You're
Rod.
You're welcome. And without any other news, I'll entertain option to adjourn, a motion to adjourn.
I can make the motion.
You can, and so we're adjourned. Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. Bye, everyone.
A great weekend, everyone.
Enjoy the sunshine. Through the
Thanks,
rain.